Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, I'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio, with highlights from our studios here in Midori House and from around the world. This week, we speak with the River Cafe's Ruthie Rogers on her new book, Squeeze Me.
We did it the way we sort of felt the rhythm of the book was. So you might have, a whiskey sour followed by a risotto, and a risotto followed by an ice cream.
Plus, we look back at the overthrow and execution of Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso with Andrew Muller.
Like most wearers of red berets, he was prone to bigger ideas. In Sankara's case, especially the big idea of Pan-Africanism.
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We begin this week's show with the latest installment of What We Learned. Here is Monocle's contributing editor, Andrew Muller.
We learned this week that Norwegians just cannot take a hint.
They gave it to Obama for doing absolutely nothing. He got the Nobel Prize for doing nothing. They should give me the Nobel Prize. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize. I had so many people, you should get the Nobel Prize.
Although it turns out they do make quite pleasant folk music. Can I get some general muttered agreement?
I think so.
We learned that, yes, despite the characteristically subtle and self-effacing campaigning of US President Donald Trump,
my rhetoric kept you out of wars. I stopped wars from happening. If it were somebody else, they would have gotten 5 Nobel Prizes. I never even got a mention.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee had instead chosen to risk a vindictive American annexation of Svalbard by giving it to someone obviously less deserving, because who isn't? But we also learned that the Norwegian Nobel Committee were not above toying with a chap's emotions.
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace.
Straighten your tie, Mr. President.
To a woman.
Aww. Well, quite. We did, however, shortly thereafter learn, and yes, we know this happened last Friday, but we record these on Thursdays to play on Fridays. We've explained this before, keep up, who the real winner was.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it.
But we learned that the president's supporters were taking his disappointment every bit as philosophically, graciously, and above all, sanely as might have been expected, and none more so than Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia's 1st District, and surely at least once the reason that his fellow Georgian US President and Nobel Peace Laureate Jimmy Carter uttered the phrase, "Dear God, no, absolutely no relation."
That's why he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, and that's why I'm introducing a resolution for a sense of Congress today that will honor him with the Nobel Peace Prize.
Pretty sure that's not how this works, Congressman, as indeed it can well be imagined that someone has said to Buddy Carter as he tried to pop corn in a tumble dryer. However, encouraged by this notion of simply awarding oneself prizes on which one has missed out,
And the winner of the special Super Duper Gold Trophy with a dinosaur on top for funniest and cleverest weekly news review monologue is What We Learned on Monocle Radio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. No, but seriously. We also learned, in an irony that is surely causing President Trump to emit the odd wry chuckle, that the week of his cruel snub by those whale-scoffing weirdos in Oslo should also be the week he achieved a diplomatic feat arguably more significant even than his brokering of peace between
Azerbaijan and Albania.
Or resolving the equally intractable and non-occurring conflict involving
Cambodia and Armenia.
We learned that, yes, and can we maybe get a gritting teeth sound effect behind the rest of this sentence? That Trump had helped bring a halt to a little over 2 years of war in Gaza. But we learned that this genuinely momentous accomplishment was not about to stop him conducting the attendant diplomatic formalities like he was guest compere of the Dean Martin celebrity roast.
France, thank you very much, Emmanuel. I would imagine Emmanuel standing someplace behind me. Where is he? I can't believe it. You're taking a low-key approach today. Italy, we have a young woman who's, I'm not allowed to say it because usually it's the end of your political career if you say it. She's a beautiful young woman. Now, if you use the word beautiful in the United States about a woman, that's the end of your political career, but I'll take my chances. We have Hungary. Oh, Victor, where is Victor? Victor. We love Victor. Victor, I call him. You know, I put the little accent on it. You are fantastic, all right? I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I'm the only one that matters.
Try the veal, tip your waiters, here all week, and so forth. But we learned that if it was probably optimistic to expect much in the way of perspective and humility from Donald Trump, we learned that his fifth smartest child was here to help on that front.
And look how much better humanity and our world is. You know, we're saving Christianity. We're saving God. We're saving the family unit. We're saving this nation.
From which rash of media appearances, we learned that Eric Trump has written a book.
Oh, no.
Or at least typed into ChatGPT the prompt rattle me up 70,000 words, expanding my own Wikipedia page into a lachrymose screed of self-justification, self-pity and paranoid fantasy, pitching my powerful billionaire family as the most persecuted people in all of human history. But we learned as he shilled his tome that the immense and imaginary suffering endured by his unfortunate tribe had in no way diminished an abiding sense of right and wrong and a profound belief in impartial justice. And we learned this from his righteous rage at New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who once filed fraud charges against Eric's father and upon whom Eric's father has recently set the Department of Justice because, she once rented a house to her grandniece, possibly without being entirely straight with her mortgage provider about her intentions in this regard, and that said grandniece may have been other than a model citizen at various points in her life. Yes, we're looking forward to the 27-part true crime podcast as well. But we learned that Eric Trump demands higher standards of public officials forsworn to uphold and abide by the laws of the land.
Somebody who's apparently committed mortgage fraud, and somebody apparently has a felon living in their home right now. Clearly you're not allowed to do that.
A convicted felon in the family home. Imagine. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
Thank you to Monocle's contributing editor Andrew Muller there from Friday's edition of The Globalist. Next up, we head to Bavaria as we turn to our bite-sized business show, Eureka. This week, we took a look at the corporate getaway, often seen as the ideal way to bring people together, to foster relationships and shape a company's future. But while well-meaning, these events can be far from fun. Airless, windowless, often soulless hotel meeting rooms on the outskirts of a town are certainly not conducive to creative thinking. But what if your business brain and body had been refreshed by alpine pastures and mountain air? For Eureka, Emma Nelson has been to Bavaria to meet the couple behind Wandel, a family business where healthy entrepreneurship is on the menu.
It's the first morning of your company's away day. But you're not in a crummy hotel on a roundabout. Your bedroom did not look out onto a car park. The windows opened fully. And a moment ago, you might just have walked past the cow that supplied the milk for your coffee. Because you're following a gravel road up through an alpine pasture, and at the top of the hill, this is waiting for you. Just 2 hours after you pull up at Vandel, a conference centre above the Bavarian town of Ruhpolding, apparently you don't just feel brighter and more relaxed. The owner says visitors actually look different.
The town is called Ruhpolding, which means Ru is getting quiet, Pol is the center, and Ding is the thing. So this is the getting quiet thing here, and that's exactly what happens. People come here, and within 2-3 hours, they come down, they relieve, they enjoy all the anger, all the pressure, all of that is a relief.
I'm Monica Harlinghausen-Smith, and I live at the wonderful Wandel, which is also a boutique seminar hotel, a farm, and so much more.
And I'm Kurt Simon Harlinghausen. I live also with my wonderful wife, and I do everything with digital, and I'm too curious not to try out from farming over prototyping and have a lot of workshops here with cool people.
Simon is the former managing director of Miele X, the digital arm of the white goods giant. When not away working as a corporate consultant, you're more likely to see him here. That's Simon on his tractor. His wife, Monica, is a business author and corporate leadership coach. Between them, they have decades of experiences of bad conferences.
Usually, if you go on a retreat with your company, you end up in some kind of a hotel, which is a bigger institution where you have a lot of different people that you don't know. You have a very common room where you have to stay, the conference room. The lighting isn't perfect, the air is usually not good, and you have just so many different impressions that hinder you in focusing on your real topic.
Soulless is the typical conference environment. It's a big chain, bad food, bad seats, bad technology. So all of that, we said, no, it's not going to happen here.
So the couple decided on a few founding principles for a new kind of corporate retreat.
We have the best sound, we have the best video, we have the best nature, best air, amazing local food. And what is the add-on is, this is a family business. So you get the spirit, the engagement, people love what they bring to the table, and people join us here.
Just describe what we have here.
Well, here we have a farmhouse which is completely modernized, which basically hosts a family plus a group of 8 to 24 people who can come here and exchange their ideas, views, visions, and learn from each other.
As we found this house, being from 1717, there was nothing there. So we thought, wow, that's an opportunity.
Justus Pfeiffer is the mayor of Ruhpolding. He isn't what you might expect when you meet him. There's not a grey hair on his head, for starters. He's 35 years old, and before he officiated weddings and revamped the town's parking system, Justus was a NATO fighter pilot.
I'd been in office for 2 months, maybe, and then Simon, he approached me in my office and said, well, Mr. Pfeiffer, we have an idea. We bought this old historic farm and a farmhouse, and now we want to develop it into something new. I was really skeptical because often we have investors who want to do something new and they have huge ideas. And Simon was different. He was brought up as a child here in Ruhpolding, so he knew how the people, how the different sporting clubs, how the tradition works here in Ruhpolding, or how community works. And so he knew how he had to deal with the locals.
So Vandel, a play on the German word for change, was built. The transformation was tough, with tradition dictating every step of the process. The 300-year-old wooden pillars and beams that had held the building together could not be moved 1 inch, so they had to be restored on site. Within an old place, they reinvented remote working.
We see it as a European hub. Salzburg is an airport, Munich is close by, but we have all the peace from the countryside.
In the first they say, wow, because it's very weird. You come, you drive through a valley, then it's a narrow road, and then at the end you end up at a house, and you enter, and then there's this kind of bar and conference room and so much wood and just a nice smell. And this is the first impression. It's like, wow, what is this?
Every room is different. as every human is, every perspective is, every situation is. And so with that, there's nothing standard, but that's life.
When the presentation and performance expert Marcus Brown was looking for a location for a summit for senior leaders to perfect their public speaking skills, he chose Vandal.
Well, I think the problem that most of these conventional conference centres have is that they're generic spaces that have been created to house large-scale generic events. The halls are full of hundreds or thousands of people. The lighting's terrible. The air's even worse. Grabbing a coffee or going to the toilet can prove to be quite challenging. And if you bundle all of that together, you have something which is a very, very stressful experience, low quality and not special or spectacular or intimate at all.
The result was the Speakery Summit, with a meeting room that looked over rolling pastures, a backdrop of dramatic alpine peaks, and with bedrooms that had their own sauna. The lanyards, the curse of the conference, were handmade from the local pine forest. There was even a performance by children from the local Tracht Association. Unlike so many hotels where supplies are brought in from miles away in a lorry, the community is very much what drives what's on offer here. From the local brewery, the videographer and even the Umpar band. Calling upon local resources is just part of the whole scheme. And it benefits the town too. On the morning of our visit, Justus Pfeiffer was holding a meeting of the town's Gemeinde, the municipal authority, in the main room.
Down in the village, there are people who the phone is ringing, and somebody comes up in the city hall into my office and I have a problem with this fence, and there's something, and can you help me? Here we are we're not in the village town, but we are for us. We are for us, and we have a clear mind and can go into the topics very deep and in detail.
Creating such a harmonious place takes hard work. The building is still being adapted to fit the rules governing the local landscape. But more astute leaders could allow Monica and Simon's peaceful yet ambitious nature to rub off on them a little. At Vandal, Monica and Simon have conquered the summit. For Monocle in Ruhpolding, Bavaria, I'm Emma Nelson.
Emma Nelson in Bavaria for this week's edition of Eureka. You are listening to the Curator of Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. To Thursday's edition of The Globalist now, we welcomed a new and exciting voice to Monocle Radio. From our Tokyo studio, Patrick Saint-Michel, a Tokyo-based writer with a focus on Japanese music, joined Emma Nelson to talk more about what has been catching his attention in Japan.
Right now in Japanese music, you are seeing a lot of as is happening all around the world, a lot of fragmentation in what listeners are being drawn to. I would say at the moment, the biggest artist in the country is a guy named Kenshi Yonezu. He's been around for a little over a decade, and he's become one of the biggest names in the country. And recently, he's released 2 songs that kind of show his duality as an artist. Both are tied to anime, which is one of the main ways people discover music in Japan now. One song called Iris Out is this really frantic, club-inspired track that kind of like fritzes out at times. It's really almost like unpredictable in its nature. The other, which is almost kind of a passing of the torch moment in J-pop, is called Jane Doe, and it's a duet that he does with the legendary singer Utada Hikaru, who has been a J-pop superstar since the late 90s. So Yonezu is kind of at the top of this. He represents the mainstream using anime as a way to reach people.
What do I find
at the same time...
Sorry to interrupt, but what
I
find really interesting about that is that the 2 people that you mentioned there have been around for quite a long time. I mean, Kenji Yonezu's been around for, a good 10, 12 years.
So they're almost reaching Yonezu in particular represents the 2010s onwards of Japanese pop music. So let's say for a millennial crowd out here in Japan. But at the same time, you are seeing a younger generation of artists starting to emerge who are reflecting new sets of both sonic and emotional values. The hottest rookie group in Japan this year is a girls' outfit called Hana. I believe it's 6 or 7 members. I want to say 7. And they came together through a reality singing competition called No Girls. And they're kind of like a pop hip-hop hybrid. And they were put together by a famous Japanese rapper named Chanmina. And their idea is sort of spreading a sort of self-positivity message combined with embracing just how you look and using hip-hop in particular to reach a very young audience that to me represents the future of Japanese pop music.
My furious searching on the internet suggests that there are 6 of them. You were talking about...
Thank you for that.
No problem at all. We learn as we go along. The emotional values that are being brought forward. I mean, you mentioned the idea of positivity and what... So just tell us a little bit about what they're singing about to make us all feel, wonderful.
They sing about embracing your own sort of personal beauty, your own personal worth. The show they came from, the aforementioned No Girls, that gets its name from the contestants basically always being told no because maybe they were seen as not pretty enough or even not talented enough to be in a traditional J-pop group. But in this new kind of outfit, they're able to just embrace themselves, even their weaknesses, even what they see as maybe things that they're not fully confident in. And the songs reflect that, celebrating that, like, hey, I'm maybe not a traditional model of a Japanese singer or even just a woman in general, but I'm still going to embrace it and create my own confidence and share that with others who need to hear that.
That's a pretty big thing, not just in Japan, but actually globally.
Definitely, yeah. So it's kind of like getting on track with global music trends too.
So we've got sort of global music trends there, but is there anything in Japan particularly that are sort of any major changes or any big upsets that are happening?
In terms of the landscape of Japanese music, we are seeing a pretty big arena boom playing out all across the country, but especially in Tokyo and the surrounding area. That includes like Yokohama, Chiba Prefecture, and it's just radically transforming the live music landscape out here. In the past 10 years, artists had to use these really old kind of, honestly, gymnasiums, basically. They were built for like sports and never had music or even like spectators in mind. So you would go to these and for artists and their companies, it was really hard to put on the shows. Like there's no like parking lot for trucks to deliver supplies. So they would just have to find these like clever ways of like getting over that hurdle. But now you're seeing a new wave of arenas emerge that are built for music, at least with music in mind. And that's really helping elevate live music in the area.
And it must also do an awful lot of good for local communities as well, because an arena will bring in lots of people and lots of business.
Absolutely. And that's something that everyone involved in the construction of these new arenas has in mind when they make them. There's a really good example that you could see in Yokohama, so about like 45 minutes by train from Tokyo. It's called K Arena Yokohama, and it's one of the only arenas, possibly the only period, that is been designed only for music. So no sports, no like theater productions, only concerts. But beyond just being a place to put on these like huge shows, like Mariah Carey will play there next month, they've also built a lot of new businesses, new hotels, new restaurants around it, and creating a new kind of entertainment hub that is helping boost up Yokohama's image as a place to go for entertainment and also boosting up the local economy significantly.
Finally, Patrick, time is, I'm afraid, against us. But if you had one track, one artist you'd advise us all to put into our ears today, who would it be?
Ooh, great question. I would say no. So if I were to choose just one and to show the way that the edges of Japanese music are always changing, I would recommend anything by an artist named Hokushi Hasegawa. He's kind of an electronic artist. He's currently signed to Brainfeeder, the LA-based experimental electronic label. And he has put out just a bunch of fantastic kind of like jazz-influenced, warped electronic dance music.
That was Patrick Saint-Michel there, Tokyo-based writer, in conversation with Emma Nelson on Thursday's episode of The Globalist. To Johannesburg now, the focus of our weekly program, Tall Stories. Our reporter Elna Schutz has been finding a peaceful stopping-off point amid the urban hustle and bustle at the City Library of South Africa's busiest metropolis.
There's something special about stepping into a library anywhere in the world. There's that unique hush, a peaceful silence of concentration between the rows and rows of possible worlds hidden between pages. And of course, there's the lovely smell of books. For residents of Johannesburg, that feeling hasn't been as accessible for a while. The main city library remained shut for almost 5 years due to renovations. Authors and local residents protested, and now the historical building is once again a hub of knowledge and wonder. It sits in the busy centre of the city, just opposite City Hall. The Italianate building was finished 90 years ago and built by Cape Town architect John Perry, who won the job in a competition. The entrance of the multi-storey imposing building has 3 high arches, and the side facades show stone medallions with great literary, scientific or philosophical figures. The renovated library spans over 13,000 square meters and holds over 700,000 books. Step inside the high atrium and you'll be greeted by escalators going up multiple stories to various types of collections. The escalators squeak a tad, and so do many of the floors, so the building is anything but hushed silent. Character hides behind every leather-covered bench and wooden bookcase. The books themselves span everything from an extensive African literature collection to a brightly decorated children's library holding gems like Don't Tickle the Polar Bear. And it's not just books, of course. There's multimedia, an art collection, and a music library with lots of sheet music and a piano. While there are certainly more ancient libraries in other parts of the world, this one has been around since the start. In the 1890s, within a decade of the gold mining settlement turned city, Johannesburg had a library. The institution also reflects some of the country's more difficult history with inequality. It was the first library in the country to open its doors to all races 20 years before apartheid ended. Its librarian in the 1960s and 70s, Anna H. Smith, was the first woman to head up a major cultural institution in the city. Of course, the library keeps up with the digital age, offering a variety of newspapers, academic and literary options online. It makes itself useful beyond books with a variety of community outreach projects and skills training. But in a city with many socioeconomic challenges, the safe and calm space between the racks is crucial to many. Besides, who doesn't love a good book?
That was our reporter Elna Schutz in Johannesburg for Tall Stories there. Still to come here on The Curator, we tour Frieze London and Frieze Masters and hear from the legendary chef Rufy Rogers. Stay tuned.
Craft matters, in small ways, like how a coffee is brewed, and in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for, which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft, tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies, all happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the heart of it all. UBS, banking is our craft.
You are with The Curator, our weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco, and it's time to head to Tuesday's edition of The Globalist. Frieze London and Frieze Masters, the annual arts events, have been taking place in London this week, primarily in Regent's Park, in the heart of Britain's capital city. Running until the 19th of October, the fairs promise they will be spanning a millennia of historical art and today's most pioneering artists. Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture, Sophie Monahan-Coombs, joined Georgina Godwin for a look at some of the highlights.
Frieze itself started as a magazine early in the 90s, and then in the early 2000s they transitioned. They still have the magazine, but they started this new art event for the UK, and it's become the most important British art event. So as you say, there's Frieze London and there's Frieze Masters. Frieze London is the kind of contemporary fair, and Frieze Masters mostly shows works that have been created before the year 2000. And then the other part of Frieze is Frieze Sculpture, which is an outdoor public sculpture park in Regent's Park, and that opens a couple of weeks before the rest of the fair. And it really is, as I say, the most important UK art event, partly because the UK is such an important player in the global art market. So it is second only to the US in terms of its share of the global art market, and it's actually the kind of market share that the UK has is larger than the rest of Europe put together. So it is a really kind of significant event in the art calendar.
How does it compare to other major international art events? I'm thinking here particularly of the Swiss company, the Art Basel brand.
Yes, Art Basel is important to mention because that is taking place. Art Basel Paris is taking place next week. So for a lot of people, especially American collectors and also Asian collectors, they will come to Europe and go to Frieze and then also go to Paris off the back of it. Every art fair has its own flavour and it's shaped by the city it's in. But I think for both Frieze and Art Basel, they're picking up new fairs and they're kind of adding to their roster. So Frieze, for example, which has fairs in LA, Seoul and New York as well as London, has just announced that it's going to be taking over Abu Dhabi Art Week, and Art Basel in the past few months said that they would be going into Qatar, into Doha, from next year. So they're really both sort of expanding, but I think they have their own sort of flavour. And as I say, they speak to the city they're in London, and Frieze still has a bit of an experimental, kind of edgier side of it.
Now, you actually spoke to the director of Frieze.
Yes, so I spoke with Eva Langray a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to ask her specifically about the art market. It's had a really kind of bruising year with quite a few gallery closures, especially in the US. And so I was just intrigued to find out what she thought. So we can listen to a little bit of Eva now.
The picture is not at all doom and gloom. I feel it's maybe more, the market is definitely more measured. It has been challenging, but in amongst that, there are many galleries that are still doing really very well. And I think, so long as everyone focuses on continuing to show great artists and do great exhibitions, there is still, space for galleries to do well in the contemporary art field. So I think this is, and it's felt like maybe also a moment of transition, I would say, with some galleries shutting down for a variety of reasons, actually. Some of it related to the market, but some of it might be different personal reasons, and also new people opening at the same time. So it's not at all doom and gloom. I think it's more a transitional moment, really.
She's mentioning galleries there. I wonder if you could tell us about some of the galleries participating.
Yes, of course. So there are, I think, about 168 galleries, and they come from more than 40 countries. So there are a lot. There is a lot to get through. I think, from my perspective, it's always worth stopping by the big blue chip, best known galleries, Gagosian, Pace, Hauser & Wirth. But I'd also recommend going to Focus, and Focus is a fairly new scheme from Frieze. It's been around for a couple of years, and it champions emerging talent from around the world, and you get galleries there from unexpected places. They're young galleries, they're up to 12 years old, and there's a couple which I've always seen really interesting work at. So Gallery Artbeat from Tbilisi and Klima from Milan are two that I've spotted at other fairs and really enjoyed what they've had on show. And the other thing I would mention with galleries is that there's quite a few new gallery spaces that have opened up. People plan things around Frieze, so you might have your opening week of your new exhibition, or you might open your new gallery outpost during Frieze, and there's a few which look really lovely. One I've been to, YDP on Bedford Square, which is a lovely old Georgian townhouse which has a really big exhibition running the whole way through it. But then also Maureen Paley has a new space, Sadie Coles as well, very famous British gallerist, has a new space as well. So there's quite a few things things outside of the fair as well that I think are worth looking up.
And if you had limited time and you were in central London, is the best thing just to head to Regent's Park?
Yes, it is. Although I would caveat that. I think, you want to leave enough time to go round Frieze London and Frieze Masters. I tend to do a big circle and see what I like the look of and then go and have a proper look at it. But I would also say that, as I said, now is the time to open your big blockbuster shows or your new gallery. And so there are lots of museum shows that are really worth going to. They'll be on for a while, but I think if you're coming to town for Frieze, now is a really great time to see them. There are a couple that I would particularly recommend. Kerry James Marshall at the RA, Wine Thibault at the Courtauld, and then one I think would just be a lovely sort of tonic to the busy, bustly nature of Frieze is Peter Doig at the Serpentine. And I love his work. He's a painter, and what he's done, which I think is really lovely at the Serpentine, is he's put up these enormous speakers that are very retro. You could spend ages looking at them themselves. They're kind of really interesting artifacts. And then he's playing a soundtrack through the different rooms, and there are these lovely kind of wooden recliners, and you can sit down and look at the paintings and just have the music kind of wash over you. And I think, in terms of finding a little bit of an antidote to what can be a very busy week on the London art scene, I think Peter Doig at the Serpentine is definitely worth checking out.
Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture, Sophie Monaghan-Coombs, with Georgina Godwin. You're listening to The Curator on Monocle Radio. Next up, we turn to Wednesday's edition of The Daily. The program ended with our On This Day historical series. To mark the 15th of October, Andrew Muller reflected on the demise and recent resurrection of one of Africa's lost leaders.
All hats, like all items of clothing, have a subtext. To wear something is to announce something. Few garments, however, declare anything as stridently as the red beret. Slap one of those on your head, possibly adorning it with a 5-pointed star or a hammer and sickle brooch, and everyone understands that you are, or wish to be seen as, or enjoy pretending to be, a fist-raising, barricade-straddling sentinel of the People's Revolution. In recent times, the red beret has been beloved of the likes of bellicose Venezuelan demagogue Hugo Chavez.
En este mismo lugar huele a azufre todavía. Ayer, el señor presidente de los Estados Unidos, a quien yo llamo el diablo,
combustible South African rabble-rouser Julius Malema.
I will never get tired. No one can make me tired. I march forward to the victory of our people.
And Ugandan rapper turned opposition leader Bobby Wine.
I know that many of you are now asking, why then do we go to the polls? Why do we risk the tear gas, the bullets, the prisons, the torture chambers, the death, and all the mess that is awaiting us? My answer to you is this. We risk it all because the alternative is giving up. And that is 10 times worse.
Whose red beret was perceived as such a red flag that Ugandan authorities banned it. There is another implication of the red beret, however, one which might cause the admirers and followers of the aforelisted to recoil, but one which is well understood by the leaders who wear one, possibly as they are no less prone to narcissistic preening than those chanting their name. The red beret is often the choice of those military units who believe themselves a cut above the ordinary square basher. Members of the parachute regiment of the British Army, whose beret is more of a maroon, but the point stands, have been heard to refer to soldiers of less storied units as crap hats. No current world leader understands all the above better than Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. Traoré, once a captain in the Burkinabe army, seized power in 2022 and has worn a red beret ever since, setting off a workday outfit of orange-green desert jungle camouflage, occasionally accessorized by an unnecessarily gold pistol. The look has helped Traoré build something of a cult among the more easily beguiled factions of the online left, who should be beguiled less easily for all kinds of reasons, but in this specific instance, one, because Traoré is not a terrifically commendable individual, and two, because he has pinched the pose from a predecessor, for whom it all went wrong on October 15th, 1987.
Ce qu'il nous reste à faire, c'est faire la révolution. What we have to do now is to make revolution.
Thomas Sankara, for it was he, had also acquired the presidency of Burkina Faso via coup d'etat back in 1983, aged just 33, although the country whose presidency he seized was then known as the Republic of Upper Volta. The name change was one of Sankara's many sweeping reforms, along with the institution of a new flag, which he designed himself, and a new national anthem, which he wrote himself. Sankara was of a generation of anti-imperialist leaders inspired by the example of the Cuban Revolution and, obviously, the millinery of Che Guevara. Unlike certain other fans of the Red Beret, however, Sankara was not exclusively a posturing blowhard. He did get stuff done. On Sankara's watch, Burkina Faso made considerable strides in healthcare and education. But, like most wearers of Red Berets, he was prone to bigger ideas. In Sankara's case especially, the big idea of Pan-Africanism.
It is our blood that has nourished the rays of capitalism, that has made possible our present condition of dependence.
This particular big idea has an understandable appeal. Africa's 54 countries absolutely should, between them, be able to feed, defend, organise and improve themselves. Africa's peoples do have a great many opportunities and difficulties in common, and it is not like most of the internal borders which divide them were actually drawn by Africans. Pan-Africanism is, however, unlike most big ideas, a deal easier said than done, and like many self-styled revolutionaries, Sankara had a preference for visions over details, rhetoric over reality. He'd also neglected to account for the problem that schemes for the dramatic redistribution of wealth and power tend to play pretty badly with the people who already have them. On this day 38 years ago, they came for him. Soldiers led by Sankara's former ally Blaise Compaoré, another Red Beret wearer, stormed the presidential residence in Ouagadougou and shot Sankara dead, along with a dozen ministers and officials. Compaoré would rule for 27 years before being tossed in a coup himself. He is now in exile in Ivory Coast and was sentenced in absentia by a Burkinabe court to life imprisonment in 2022. Not for his many malfeasances in office, but for his role in the death of Thomas Sankara, who inhabited his role and his hat with more imagination than his successors.
Monocle's Andrew Muller in this week's edition of our On This Day series. We're nearing the end of the show, but before we go, we have time for one final highlight, and it is to my weekly program, The Stack. We began the show by welcoming to the studio the legendary chef Ruthie Rogers from the incredible The River Café. She just published a new book titled Squeeze Me, Lemon Recipes and Art. A stunning celebration of lemons, the book was made in partnership with iconic artist Ed Ruscha. It's not your usual cooking book. Here is Ruthie with more.
It's Ed Ruscha, who is, as we know, the great living artist of today, and also myself doing the recipes with the River Cafe, and also Johnny Ive, who designed the Apple Watch and the iMac with Steve Jobs many years ago, and has a company now called Love From, and Heather Ive, who's a poet. So I was doing a lot of the words. So it was a real collaboration of friends and people who, you know, have the same values, the same ideas. And with Ed, I've been a fan of Ed long before I knew him. His work, as we all know, is just a great artist, as I said. I always said to him, you know, he loves books. Books are a large part of, especially his early work, of the ones he did of the gas stations. And so I said to him, Ed, please, let's do a book. And he went, Ruthie, one day we'll do one. And then we'd go back to his dry martini or whatever he was doing. And so I said, well, how about it a couple of years ago? How about that book, Ed? And he said, let me finish the show at the Museum of Modern Art. He did a great retrospective there. And I said, okay. And then after that, it was, I have another this retrospective is traveling to Los Angeles. So let's talk then. So we did. And I was in LA and I went to the studio. And he said, okay, I'll do it on two conditions. One is that it's a small book, a short book. And the other one is it has one subject, food-wise. And so we went into behind his studio. He had lemon trees. And so he came on the idea of doing a book about lemons.
And I think lemons are the best.
They are the best.
I know in your restaurant you use a lot of lemons.
We use a lot.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But how interesting that he had lemon trees in his studio.
In a very, and in a very, it's not a garden. It's in Culver City. It's almost industrial in its aspect. He has cars in the garage. He has concrete on the floor, but then there's a small patch and it has lemon trees in them.
And of course, in the Beautiful, there's about 47, 48 lemon recipes. But it's fascinating that there's not a picture of the dish itself, but beautiful photography by Ed as well. It's quite innovative. It's not your usual recipe book, right, Rufi?
Well, what we want people to do is to, explore it through reading the recipes. Oh, I didn't know you could make a risotto with lemon. As you just said to me,
roast potatoes.
5 minutes, you could do roast potatoes with lemons. And it's a book that explains itself through joy, I think. It portrays itself through happiness and intrigue. And Ed's work, he did all the art and photography in his studio. And the captions that he always has, well, not always, but a lot of his work has words. He plays with words. And so he has his own typeface, and he put the type on the photographs. And Heather Ive did the words. Some of them were Ed's that he found, W.C. Fields or Pablo Neruda. And then she did the rest, which are funny and intriguing. And you turn the book around to read them.
It's cheeky sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a bit cheeky. That's a good word. And we almost did the recipes like captions because we wanted them to be able to have a lot of white around. We wanted the art to shine. And we also, if you do a book with so few recipes, there's no point in having chapters because you might only have 4 pastas and, 3 drinks and 1 soup. So we did it the way we sort of felt the rhythm of the book was. So you might have, a whiskey sour followed by a risotto, and a risotto followed by an ice cream. It's a book to look at in bed. It's a book to take into your kitchen. It's a book to leave, on your sofa. It's a great present. It's really, we've priced it very fairly so people could use it. And it's called Squeeze Me.
I love the title already.
That was Heather Ive, yeah.
And by the way, going back to lemons, I think they are so versatile and truly versatile because they can be sour, it can be sweet, it can be salty. I mean, there's so many different usages, right? I don't think there's many ingredients quite like that.
No, I'm already thinking about the next book, and we're thinking, well, what ingredient would be that you might do with that for, able to do this? And I think it also is very delightful because Ed really wanted the photographs at the end of a little girl just eating a lemon. And that's pretty radical to actually just put a lemon in your mouth. But there she is.
It's funny that, I grew up in Brazil, Rufi. So for us, actually, because we're more of a lime country, but every time there were lemons in the supermarket, it was considered a little bit more upmarket. We called it the Sicilian lemon, So we had this kind of image of the lemon as there's quite an interesting connection there.
What did you make with them?
We used to make cakes, actually. A lot of desserts with it. Chicken as well. I think chicken with lemons. Do you have a favorite recipe from the book? Not a favorite, but one that perhaps come to your mind now, because all of them are your favorites.
They are. It's like having children.
Yes.
I think that I was explaining, but maybe we should do a different one, because I was explaining about the recipe that you add lemon to the milk and then it curdles the sauce, which is for pork, but you can do it with chicken. And it was something that my mother-in-law always used to do. She was a northern Italian. She would brown a chicken, say, and she would then put it in a saucepan and put with lemon peel and milk about halfway up and let it cook very, very slowly. And then what happens, it becomes curdled, but in a good way. You're always worried about milk curdling. And so I think that one is a special recipe because it's just two ingredients with work together to make something delicious. And then I love, I can say that, grilled sea bass with lemon, because if you squeeze it over, a lemon over it, you don't need a rich sauce with it. You don't need very much. The lemon and the juice forms its own sauce. I love a lemon sorbet.
Granita as well.
Granita, yeah. And I love whiskey sour, which has lemon. So we have, as you say, it's like choosing your best friend or your best film or your best recipe. But I'm very proud. And these are, my name is on the cover because there were 3 people, in a way, that did it. It is a River Cafe cookbook. The recipes all come from the River Cafe kitchen.
And Ruth, it's so great to have you here doing our podcast because you are amazing at podcasts.
Oh, you have to come on mine.
Yes.
I have a podcast called Ruthie's Table 4, and it started during COVID when people were separated from each other. And we're going into our 5th season now. And it is just really, you realize how deeply food relates to memory.
I mean, I was going to be a bit cliche and end the podcast with the same question you do in yours. What's your comfort food, right?
Oh, my comfort food.
But I mean, you kind of mentioned some, but maybe you can mention something.
We ask everybody, we ask everyone what is their comfort food. It is, I suppose, it would probably be tomato pasta. I just love a tomato pasta. So it's... But then it might be, sometimes when I'm coming back from the River Cafe at 10:30 or 11 at night, I stop near my house and have an ice cream. I get one for the taxi driver and one for me. The other day I offered to give the taxi driver an ice cream when I went in. He said, "You did that the last time I took you home." And it was really sweet.
I think that's the perfect comfort food. Maybe a lemon sorbet, perhaps?
Yeah, lemon sorbet, yeah. But I do really want to give credit to both Johnny Ive, Heather Ive, and Ed Ruscha, who really, in California, in LA and San Francisco and London, created a beautiful book.
The legendary chef Ruthie Rogers from the River Cafe. Her book, Squeeze Me, Lemon Recipes and Art, is out now, published by Frieze. And of course, you can try the real thing on the River Cafe and its adjacent, the River Cafe Cafe. Well, that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by Tom Webb and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week to hear some of the very best of the programs here on Monocle Radio. Thank you for listening.